Omagyantimadandasya Yanangana Shalakaya Chaksunaminitam Jena Tasmaya Sigurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadanti Saha Bhadanti Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Vanchakalpa Tudabhyasa, Kripa Sindhu Devacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnava. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Today is the most auspicious celebration of the appearance day of Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written that holy days like Ekadasi and Janmashtami, and obviously Radhastami, are the mothers of devotion for devotees who properly respect them. And how to properly respect such a day? Nothing could be better than all of us here today from La France, et tout le monde, the whole world. We have devotees from many countries celebrating at the lotus feet of Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava. This is a special occasion for all of us to churn the nectar of devotion by discussing the glories of Srimati Radharani. Often when people see a picture or a painting of Radha, they ask, who's the girl with Krishna? And our answer is that she's Krishna's eternal consort, who has the most purest and deepest love for Krishna, and therefore she's famous as the topmost devotee of Krishna. That's made very clear by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Upadeshamrita, which Srila Prabhupada very kindly translated during his lifetime as Nectar of Instruction, verse 10. And I was reading recently that in Great Britain, in the UK, some years back, they were looking into our movement to see if it was something actually authentic. And they had a whole study, the government did a study on our movement, and to understand the movement, they studied Srila Prabhupada's books. One time Prabhupada said, if you want to know me, he said, read my books. So the texts are there, but Srila Prabhupada's illuminating purports are there. And, well, they realized we were authentic, we were authorized, Bhagavad Gita as it is, etc. But they said in their review, they felt that this Nectar of Instruction was the book that most explained who we are. If you want to know what is the Hare Krishna movement, they say you read this Nectar of Instruction. I thought that was very interesting. I don't know how popular it is amongst devotees. We do study Prabhupada's books, but the British government said, you want to know what is Hare Krishna? Read Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita, translated and commented on by Srila Prabhupada. So verse 10, we get a very deep understanding of who is Srimati Radharani. Rupa Goswami writes, clearly the Jnanis are dearer to the Lord than karmis. And dearer still are those who place devotion above the goal of liberation. But better yet are those who have achieved prema, and best amongst them are the lotus-eyed cowherd girls of Braj. Dear to Krishna than all of them is Srimati Radharani, and her sacred pond, Sri Radhakund, is just as dear to the Lord. So what pious person will not take shelter there? So in that particular scripture, translated by Prabhupada, obviously for various reasons, there's basic instructions how to become Krishna conscious, but there's also the Panam Gatim. We know who we are, and we know where we're going. That's the essence, actually, of Upadeshamrita. You could give many lectures on that scripture, but for today, we're blessed to hear, again, how Radharani is the topmost devotee. Therefore, as Krishna says, one who says is my devotee is not my devotee, but one who says he's the devotee of my devotee, he's my devotee. This is how we understand Krishna consciousness. So therefore, she's the best of all devotees. Therefore, she's in charge of bhakti. She's in charge of devotional service. So we approach her very humbly and beg at her lotus feet for service to Krishna. And how do we do that? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. We say Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare, Prabhupada described as the vocative of Hara, and Hara refers to the supreme pleasure potency of the Lord, Ladini Shakti. Actually, Radharani is an expansion of Krishna's Ladini Shakti, his pleasure potency. So therefore, she's present in the vocative Hare. Hare. That's Radha. So when we're chanting, we should think like that. And therefore, the translation is such. Prabhupada said, my dear Lord, my dear energy to the Lord, Ladini Shakti, the pleasure potency, the two of you, please pick me up from this world of death, birth and death, and fix me as an atom at your lotus feet in the spiritual world. It's for this reason, taking shelter of Radharani, so that we can be engaged in Krishna's service, because she knows that loving devotion the best, that Srila Prabhupada's father, Gurmohan Dey, would always ask any visiting sadhu to their home to bless our Prabhupada to become a devotee of Radharani. That is the avenue for getting the seva of Krishna, because she'll recommend us. Srila Prabhupada mentioned in a room conversation, August 21st, 1976, famous, many devotees have this on the tip of their tongue. My father was a great devotee, a pure Vaishnava. When any saintly person would come, he would simply say, give blessings to my son that he may become Radharani's servant. So therefore we can understand there's no more glorious position to be in as a servant than to become Radharani's servant. Actually, another great devotee during the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whom Prabhupada would often quote verses from him, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, he puts it very wonderfully, Radharani's position in the eyes of the bhaktas, in his Vrindavan Mahima Mudita, Shataka 2. Shataka means like a chapter, Shataka 2. Verse 34. It's long, but every word, every syllable is Amrita. Glorious are those persons who desire to climb out of the well of material existence and attain liberation. All glories to them. Even more glorious are those who have dedicated themselves to the service of the Lord. Higher than those who want mukti, are those who serve the Lord. More elevated again are those who have become attached to Krishna's lotus feet. Those who love the husband of the Queen Rukmini are even superior to such devotees, while still more praiseworthy are those who are dear to the son of Yashoda. More glorious again are those who have made friends with Subala's comrades. Superior to those in the mood of friendship, because Kaura boys are in the mood of friendship, are those who worship the Lord as do the lovers of Krishna, the gopis. However, standing at the head of all devotees in new creation are those who have been carried away by the flood of pure, unadulterated love, emanating from the daughter of the king of Vrishabhanu, Srimati Radharani, and worship her above all. Thank you to Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. So we're encouraged, therefore, in her to hear about and hopefully one day participate in her loving affairs with Krishna. We would like to, that's our goal actually, that one day, obviously by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, we're practicing sadhakas, but one day we want to go back home, back to Godhead and serve in Braj. Even as a tree, every living entity in the spiritual world is fully Krishna conscious. And they all have their parts to play in Radha and Krishna's loving pastimes. So, but as we all know, Srila Prabhupada has given a word of caution about Radha and Krishna's loving affairs, especially Rasa Leela. That we should never equate the loving pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And Prabhupada writes elaborately. He actually gave a summary of the 10th canto, and that's the Krishna book, very early in the movement. It's full of descriptions of Radha and Krishna's loving pastimes, but Prabhupada several times gives a cautionary word that the loving pastimes of Radha and Krishna are not like the loving affairs of a boy and girl in this world. The love of Radha and Krishna is transcendental. It may look like the loving affairs of a boy and girl, but it's different. And Prabhupada gave a nice analogy so we can distinguish the two. Analogies are given to help us understand deep philosophical points. We may not grasp it, so here's an analogy to help us understand. He would give analogies. So in this regard, Prabhupada would mention two metals, iron and gold. They're classified as metals, but there's a world of difference between iron and gold. If I tell you I'd like to donate to your temple an iron coin or a gold coin, which would you choose? The gold coin. So there's a world of difference, therefore, between the love of Radha and Krishna and the love of boys and girls in this world. Actually, Rupa Goswami, he takes off on that. He says in his Padyavali, as young boys are attracted to young girls, and young girls are attracted to young boys, so, my Lord, in a transcendental way, let me become attached to you in transcendental love. Another analogy there. Analogies are very important. So we have to be very careful. We're cautionary. Actually, it's described before entering into the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where we hear some very intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna. One should first understand God is very great and I am very small. He is the master and I am the servant. And how to develop that mentality? You read the first 9 cantos. Slow but steady wins the race. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. But it's also how you start, how you go on, and how you finish. We read very carefully the first 9 cantos, and then we enter into the 10th canto, but very cautiously, by holding on to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada's purports, then we can understand. How can there be material desires in the affairs of Radha and Krishna when their very forms are made of Satchidananda Vigraha, spiritual elements? Our bodies are made of whatever, earth, air, fire, water, material elements, and therefore we can experience material desires, or that body facilitates our material desires. But the forms of the Lord, Satchidananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, there's no room for material desires. There's so many points that could be made that way. Therefore, it's stated that if one wants to understand the affairs, the loving affairs, the deep loving affairs of Radha and Krishna, one has to be freed from sex desire, from lust. It's one of the 3 gates leading to hell, Helen Brinson lecture, lust, anger, and greed. So there, as sadhakas, we become free from those things. However, at the same time, Srimad Bhagavatam gives an interesting antidote to our materialistic nature, which causes us to perhaps misunderstand Radha and Krishna's pastimes. How do we become freed from sex desire? How do we become freed from material desires. It's very interesting. And many acharyas have commented on it, including Srila Prabhupada. It's Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-39. It states how by hearing about the loving pastimes of God and Krishna from authoritative sources, who's our authority? One and only authority is Srila Prabhupada. Anyone who represents Srila Prabhupada, also our authority. But to hear about the loving pastimes of God and Krishna from authoritative sources, one becomes freed from material desires. Wow. What's the translation of that verse? Quote, anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. So that may be why Srila Prabhupada, when the movement was just developing, he gave us a summary of the 10th canto in an authoritative way. You want to understand these loving affairs, you can hear them, but hear them from the lips of Srila Prabhupada as he's presenting in the modern day. And you can understand. That's why in the introduction to Krishna book, Prabhupada said, one day, this Krishna book, the summary of the 10th canto, will give solace to those devotees who are experiencing Vipralambha Bhav. That means separation from Krishna. That's a very high topic, but it's on our bucket list. That's what we're aiming for. So Prabhupada said, when one comes to that stage of Vipralambha Bhav, O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. I'm feeling all vacant in the world and you're absent. That's our hope. That's our heartbeat. We're not pretentious. We don't claim to be there. But we have that goal in mind. Eke Kudunandana. Keep the goal in mind. So Prabhupada said, when we get there, what will give us solace? To hear about Radha and Krishna and their loving affairs in Vrindavan. He presented it. There's that chapter, the Rasa Dance. You'll read that, and it'll give you solace. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. He's preparing us from A to Z, from Shraddha to Prema. He's preparing us. Everything is there in Srila Prabhupada's books. We don't have to look elsewhere. And Prabhupada comments on this fact that you can become freed from lust by hearing Radha and Krishna's Rasa Leela. How is that possible? By hearing about that Rasa Leela from him. Therefore, in his introduction, he writes as follows. Therefore, when those who are after sex life in this material world hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, they will relish transcendental pleasure. Although it appears to be materialistic, the advantage will be that they will gradually be elevated to the spiritual platform. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that if one hears the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis from authorities with submission, he will be promoted to the platform of transcendental living service to the Lord, and the nasty material desires of lust within his heart will be completely vanquished. In other words, such hearing will counteract material sex life. So we're not forbidden to hear these pastimes, but from the lips of a pure devotee. Actually, anything that comes from the lips of a pure devotee, which means comes from the heart, is purifying. Prabhupada said that in relationship to chanting Hare Krishna. He said the chanting of Hare Krishna, when heard from the lips of a pure devotee, has a special effect. We're all benefited hearing the mantra, but you hear it from the lips of a pure devotee, has a special effect. Therefore, in my travels, I'm always encouraging devotees to play Srila Prabhupada's bhajans. Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam. There's so many bhajans. Actually, here in France, I remember in Paris, we asked Prabhupada, can we record some more bhajans? So he got the harmonium, immediately started singing a bhajan by Narottam Das Thakur. We have our favorite kirtaniers, who are chanting so wonderfully. And you hear those bhajans. I get in cars, people drive me to the temple, and there's Bhattahari and Sri Prahlad and Govinda Maharaj. And wow. I'd say, can you put Prabhupada on? What? Not that they're being disrespectful, but it should become a habit, a tradition. I remember in the early days when I joined, the speakers throughout the Detroit temple and throughout the London temple, Paris temple, were always playing those bhajans of Prabhupada, because even now hearing them, even though Prabhupada's not here, is present in the sound of his voice and his instructions. So it's a nice thing to do, I think, if you can remember when you go home, put on a Prabhupada bhajan, then you'll get a quantum leap in your spiritual progress. So this is a point we keep stressing, but one more verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Adi Leela 5, 45, 47. One hears or describes with great faith the pastimes of Lord Krishna, such as his rasa dance with the gopis. What happens? The disease of lusty desires in his heart and the agitation caused by the three modes of material nature are immediately nullified, and he becomes sober and silent. Wow. We like to think, here, sober and silent. That's also Krishna. But if you've got time, chant Hare Krishna. So you're sober and silent. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. You can also chant like that. We can have wild kirtans, but you can be like Haridas Thakur. He chanted 300,000 names a day. 1,000 names in his mind, and 1,000 days softly, and 100,000 names in his mind, 100,000 names soft, and 100,000 names at the top of his voice. Now, I'm not going to do that here. But that was for the benefit of any living entity who may have heard his pure sound vibration of chanting Hare Krishna. We take as much pleasure sharing the holy names as we do chanting the holy names. Sharing the holy names is Sankirtan. Like Jesus said, it's better to give than is to receive. So we've got lots of opportunities to relish the chanting. We can chant softly to ourselves, relish. We can have congregational chanting like we did this morning with the devotees. And we can go to Tour and Châteauroux, La Paris, and we can chant. There's 3 different ways. You've got lots of choices, a lot of variety in Krishna consciousness. But chant, chant, chant. So this morning, we do want to discuss some of Radha Krishna's pastimes, but I'll take the safe approach, the safe road today, and I want to discuss her early childhood pastimes. I'll be safe and sound there. If I want to understand something deeper, I'll read Krishna book. So let's begin, let's see, early childhood. Well, what is that? That is when she appeared. That's how it all started, when she appeared. Actually, we learn in Srimad Bhagavatam how 5,000 years ago this world was in a very distressed state of being. You think it's bad now. It was really bad then. So Prabhupada kind of summarized almost poetically that time frame in Krishna book. It's like poetry. Once the world was overburdened by the unnecessary defense forces of different kings who are actually demons. We've heard this before, right? But one of the qualities a devotee develops is poetry. There's that saying, what is the use of a bowman's arrow unless it pierces the heart of his enemy? And what is the use of a poet unless his poetry strikes the heart in emotions for Krishna? So Prabhupada, when he would speak, you could feel, your heart fluttering. Oh, I want to be like him. I want to be Krishna conscious. So once the world was overburdened, so this is poetry, by the unnecessary defense forces of different kings who were actually demons, but were posing themselves as the royal order. We know that moment. But the Bhagavatam goes on to describe how Bhumi Devi, the predominating deity of the earth, went and she complained to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma went to the shore of the milk ocean and he spoke to Lord Vishnu, who eventually agreed, okay, it's so bad, the Earth planet, I think it's worse now with the president of my country anyway. It's really bad, so I'll come and rectify the situation. So we know he came. But there's more details in the Shastra. For example, in Garga Samhita, more details are given about the appearance of Krishna in this world. Now, of course, some scholars, they advocate that Garga Samhita is not a bona fide scripture. I have to do a lot of studies, so you may not be aware of this fact, but there is some vocal objection out there that Garga Samhita is not bona fide. However, Srila Sanatana Goswami, who's our authority, Mahaprabhu had the 6 Goswamis write the foundation of the Krishna conscious movement, like a house stands on a foundation. So what is the foundation of our movement? It's our philosophy. This is nothing sentimental. There's a lot of emotion, but it's not sentiment because it's based on scripture, on shastra. Like Prabhupada said, when speaking in learned circles, you have to qualify your point by referring to a particular shloka in the Gita or the Bhagavatam or Chaitanya to make it valid. So Shastras are our foundation. And the 6 Goswamis, they wrote the foundation. I know, I carried Prabhupada's suitcase one time. He was traveling, I looked in it. He was traveling with the books of the predecessor acharyas, Om Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Srila Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami. What Prabhupada said was based on what he read, the authoritative knowledge that's come down through the cyclic succession. So Sanatana Goswami, in his commentary on his own book, Brihat Bhagavatamritam, which is published by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust in 1/1/2123, he writes, the confidential science of pure devotional service is taught explicitly only in a few Vedic scriptures, little known to the public, but now known. Amongst those rare texts are Gopal Tapani Upanishad, Narada Pancharatra, the Garga Samhita. He writes, number 3, the Garga Samhita, the Vishnu Purana, the Harivamsa Upapurana, the Uttarakanda of the Padma Purana, and the Bhagavad Mahapurana. This is Srila Sanatana Goswami, who we first approached in our attempt to understand Vrindavan, Madan Mohan, and what is Braj. So, but often quoted. And pastimes of Srila Sanatana Goswami are throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, in Brihat Bhagavatamritam, published by the Bhaktivedanta, he says it's one of the rare texts to understand what is pure devotional service, Garga Samhita. And my godbrother Dhanavir Goswami has translated and given some nice commentary on Garga Samhita. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the pioneer of the Krishna conscious movement, he also refers to Garga Samhita in his Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. What a book, Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. If you want to know what is Navadvip, what is Nadia, what is Gaur, what is Nitai, what is Panchatattva, the whole essence. Technically, we're Gaur Bhaktas, because without the mercy of Gauranga, we can't understand what is Radha and Krishna. We're Gaur Bhaktas. Itago Permanandi Hari Hari Bo. So, in his book, Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, I read it. He quotes the Garga Samhita 20 times. For example, in chapter 3, text 19, he writes, Mayapuri Sakshad, Sarvananda Vihardhini, Shri Garga Samhita Yam Shah, Kirtita Papa Nashini. Mayapur is the Lord's Yogamaya potency. It is filled with ever-increasing bliss. In the Garga Samhita, it is described as the destroyer of all sins. So we can safely refer to the Garga Samhita today to go a little deeper in understanding some of Radharani's pastimes, because they're mentioned there. I feel safe doing that because of the statements of the previous acharyas. And Prabhupada is also authorized to research such books. In his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1:1, 1:1:1, he writes, within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Ballabhacharya, and many other distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam, and the serious student would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental messages. Again, we're neophytes. We always have someone senior to us. We have our Guru Maharajas. We have devotees in respectful positions. We have our GBC Shastra Committee, Hari Parshad and Mukunda Datta, and we have many senior devotees. They may not have a name or title, but you know they're advanced. With their care, we can go on with these deeper understandings, because they're also researching the scriptures, not outside, but inside. So, having established that, Garga Samhita says that as Krishna was preparing to descend to the earth, he went to Srimati Radharani and requested her to join him in his earthly pastimes. How could it be otherwise? Radharani is described as Anapayini. She's never separated from Krishna. Even it appears she's separated. She's the perfect example of always remember Krishna, never forget him. So she's always with Krishna. She's his Ladini Shakti, his pleasure potency. She's always with him. So Krishna said, can you come? So Garga Samhita, it's so sweet. Madhur, Madhur, Madhur Bhaje, Bengali. When the kirtan's sweet, when the holy names manifesting, being chanted purely, Madhur, Madhur, Madhur Bhaje. So Radharani thought for a moment, and she agreed on the following conditions. Okay, I'll come, but there's some conditions, Krishna. Radha doesn't do what Krishna says. Krishna does what Radha says, because she has that Mahabhav. She controls Krishna by her love. Krishna, by definition, you read the Webster's Dictionary, God is the supreme controller. But Radharani's love is so great that she controls Krishna with her love. And that love is very mysterious. Even Krishna couldn't understand it. What is this love this girl has for me that I do whatever she says? And when she gets angry with me, I have to go through so many efforts to, pacify her man, her anger. To do that, he had to actually appear Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radhe Krishna Hayanga. Originally God was one, but then he became two, as Radha and Krishna. He again became one in the personality of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who came to this world for two reasons. In the mood of a devotee, to try to understand Radharani's love for him and to spread the chanting of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Vrindavan Ishwari Shrimati Radharani ki. So she made some conditions. And Krishna said, okay, whatever you want. She said, and I'm quoting Garga Samhita, my dear Shyam, wherever you go, I must also be there. But how can I be happy where there's no Vrindavan forest, where there's no Jamuna river, and there's no Govardhan hill? If you want me to come with you to the earthly planet, then you must bring all of Vrindavan with us, especially the Vrindavan forest, the Jamuna river, and Govardhan hill. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Because the atmosphere we live in is either conducive to sinful activity or it's conducive to mode of goodness activity or transcendental activity. People live in the cities in the mode of passion. People go to the bars and the discos. That's the mode of ignorance. They become inspired. Yes, this is right. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. We live in New Mayapur. This is a dham. Technically, it's a dham because Radha and Krishna are here. They're having their pastimes. Krishna Bam, Gornitai, Prabhupada. Established. This came from the heart of Prabhupada. So we live here because the atmosphere is conducive for Krishna consciousness. She said, I'll come to that nasty earth, that horrible planet in the material world, but I want the atmosphere of Braj to always be there. So, of course, Krishna agreed. And therefore, shortly after that, was all established. In the Leela, Radharani made her appearance in Braj, in the village of Raval. When we go to Braj, those of you who have been to Vrindavan or you live in Vrindavan, you know we like to go to Varshana. Varshana means a flood of bliss. It's also a name of Radharani, but a flood of bliss because her pastimes take place there as a young girl before she married Abhimanyu, who's Krishna's shadow. It's all a pastime. In Varshana, many wonderful pastimes, but originally she appeared in the village of Raval, Ravao. And Shastra says that just as Krishna enjoyed his childhood in Gokul, on the earth, Gokul, and his youth in Nandagram, Radha enjoyed her childhood in Raval and her youth in Varshana. These are all details, but love is in the details. We have so many. I often tell in my public lectures, how can you love someone you know nothing about? Why did you accept this person as your husband? Why did you accept this girl as your wife? Because the way they dress, the way they talk, the way they walk, their interest in this or that, or music or that, the details, you took them as a spouse. So if we want to reawaken our love for Krishna, want to reconnect with Krishna, we have to know something about him. And that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. This is the gift we're giving the world. Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? He's a cowherd boy. Excuse me? He's blue. He has a peacock feather. He plays a flute. Yes? How is that possible? Well, you're thinking he's an old man withering with old age and arthritis and gray hairs, but how could that be? You throw in some philosophy. If he's the supreme controller, then how is he controlled by the modes of nature in the material world? We're forced to take birth, forced to get disease, forced to grow, forced to die. But God doesn't undergo that. He's the controller. He never comes under the influence of the material. So therefore, he's the original person, but he remains ever youthful as a little boy. That convinced me to become a devotee. Well, that's cool. And like, what does he do? You can play with him. You can wrestle with him. So like that, that's our philosophy. So everything about our movement's attractive. So here we learn that Radharani was born in Raval, but she moved eventually to Varshana. And Srila Raghunath Das Goswami gives a very beautiful description of Raval in his writings. Oh, I'd like to hear where Radha took birth. You look at the altar, your mind's meant to be filled with the characteristics of Sri Radha and her love and her compassion and her life. We don't just look at the carving. We look at the person. A devotee who's advanced doesn't just come in front of the deity to just look for a little while and go. They want to stand before the deity, absorb themselves in smaranam, remembering. By reading Krishna book and different books, we read how Radha and Krishna had their pastimes. You're supposed to remember that, how they dressed, what they did, etc. You can stand a long time in front of the deities because darshan doesn't just mean you're looking at Krishna. My dear Lord, you're not a statue. You're directly the son of Maharaj Nanda, Chaitanya Charitamrita, little Brahmin boy. You're not a statue. You're directly the son of Maharaj Nanda. So darshan doesn't just mean you're looking at Krishna. Krishna's also looking at you. You just stand like, Krishna, come on. Clean my heart by your glance. As Shiva in the Radha Kripa Kataka, he's praying just for the glance of Radha. Because the glance is so purifying. It's very purifying. I remember when we were with Srila Prabhupada, many Prabhupada disciples will confirm that when Prabhupada looked at you, it's like he was looking in your heart. He knew, he could see who you really are. A little embarrassing sometimes, but always in an encouraging way. So the glance of a pure devotee, the glance of the deity. So Mommy, I don't want to go now. Krishna's looking at my heart. Jaito darbanamarjanam scrubgubdub. Clean my heart. Because somewhere in my heart there's that golden seed of prema, love for you. Please help me, Krishna. Please purify my heart. So like that, so we love to hear the details. So when we stand in front of Gaurnitai, Krishna Balaram, Giriraj Govardhan, Narasimha, we can remember their pastime. Just that remembrance, even our stage of Krishna consciousness, it's very purifying. So here's some details about where Radharani appeared. This is her I don't say birthday, it's not. This is her appearance day. So it's significant that on this day we mention, by the grace of Raghunath Das Goswami, one of our great acharyas, what was that village like? So he refers to it as Mukhya Ravali. That's how it's the same place, but he used, different towns sometimes have different names or addressed in different ways. So he calls Raval Mukhya Ravali, which means the chief of all the towns in Braj. Jai Sri Radhe. You know, he is very advanced devotee. So he think, oh, Radha appeared there. Therefore, that town is the chief of all the towns in Vrindavan. This is Krishna consciousness. So in his Brajavilashtava, he writes, in the city of Mukhya Ravali, the precious jewel known as Srimati Radharani took birth in the mind of Kirtida Devi's womb, which is glorified by jubilant demigods, sages, and human beings. I pray that when I enter King Vrishabhana's capital city of Mukhya Ravali, populated by many gopas, gopis, and sarabi cows, I may drown in a great flood of transcendental bliss and love. This is what happens when you visit Vrindavan. Prabhupada invites us to all come to Vrindavan. In one purport in the 10th canto, not long before Prabhupada departed this world, he addressed all the members of the society to come and visit or live in Braj. We can live in Braj. He invites even non-devotees to come because the Dham is so potent. So here he said, by going to that village, he's hoping to drown in a great flood of transcendental bliss and love. Now, there are 3 other different versions how Radharani made her appearance. This is her appearance day, so we're discussing. What? 3 different, the Acharyas say this is because Radha and Krishna appear on the earth in different millenniums. And therefore, there's sometimes slightly different variations of their pastimes. So there's different versions about her appearance. Just like there's different versions about Krishna's appearance, Janmashtami. We have the version in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, of course, our ultimate authority. But Jiva Goswami gives a slightly different version in his writings, and we also accept that. This is our transcendental movement. So, just like it's described in Nrsimha Purana, I read the Nrsimha Purana. In some millenniums, Lord Nrsimhadev appears from a pillar, right? I read in another millennium, he appeared from a flower. There's a big fight going on. There's a vase of flowers there, and Nrsimhadev comes out of the flower. Narasingha Purana. Prabhupada has quoted Nrsimha Purana several times. There's a verse in the Nrsimha Purana that when the residents of hell heard the holy names of Krishna being chanted, they ascended to Shvargalok. The verse from the Nrsimha Purana. Anyway, another verse, in another time, he simply walks into town. Doesn't come out of the pillar. He walks into town. So there's 3 versions of Radha's appearance as well. And this is described again in Garga Samhita. So we can quote with some authority. 1, she made her divine appearance from the ground. Okay. 2, she made her appearance on the top of a lotus flower. 3, in the womb of her mother, Kirtida Sundari. As far as the ground version, right? The ground version, she appeared from the ground. I was listening to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada in Montreal. Get this, last week, August 30th, 1968, where Prabhupada described how King Vrishabhanu, her father, was once plowing his fields with a golden plow. This is from Prabhupada's lotus lips. This is way back in 1968. He's talking and he said, yes, King Vrishabhanu, probably in those days they didn't know who King Vrishabhanu was, but Prabhupada speaking as a Brajbasi, obviously, he was plowing his fields with a golden plow and he found baby Radha in the earth. Like sometimes you plow and things come up, potatoes, roots. He's plowing. This is all Leela, arranged by Mother Purnamasi. Radha came. And he picked her up and he brought her to his palace in Raval. And he gave her to his wife, Kirtidasundari. And I was thinking how similar that is to a pastime where the father of Sita Devi, Janaka Maharaj, he was plowing the field. I don't remember it being a golden plow anyway. And Sita appeared. That's Ramayan. Interesting, isn't it? This is all nectar. Nectar. Le nectar. The second version is from oral tradition. Now, we have to be a little careful when we hear oral tradition. Like in Vrindavan, you hear so many stories. That Radharani makes her appearance from a lotus flower. In this version, her father, King Vrishabhanu, is bathing in the river Jamuna, and he suddenly looks up and he sees a 1,000-petaled lotus flower floating down the river towards him. Now, we've seen lotus flowers, not in France, maybe, I don't know, in a park somewhere. India, I've seen them about that big, about this big. I didn't see a 1,000-petaled lotus, but it's all true. It's all true. It's reality, the absolute truth. A 1,000-petaled lotus flower is coming down the river towards him. And in the center of that lotus flower sits a very effulgent baby girl. And as the lotus flower passed by, King Vrishabhanu lifted the smiling baby out of the lotus and embraced her. And when he did, he felt waves of transcendental ecstasy throughout his body. Like if you grab an electric wire. Yes, I went to see the cow. Don't touch the wire. Did you touch the wire? So he touched the baby girl and he felt transcendental emotions. Now the third version is described in Garga Samhita. It's that Radharani appeared in the womb of her mother, Kirtidasundari, without having been impregnated by her husband. And it's described how, as clouds floated very peacefully in the sky, Radharani, in that version, made her appearance at noon on the 8th day of the bright fortnight of the moon in the month of Bhadra. We are in the month of Bhadra, August, September. We should know these things. This is our tradition. We should know our tradition. We have to study to know our tradition. The richness is in our tradition. We're changing the face of the earth. We're giving her children new birth. What are we giving? The art of living, a way of life. We have a very rich tradition. We should know all these things. This is the month of Bhadra. You meet somebody, and how are you doing? Oh, in the month of Bhadra, I'm doing fine. We should talk like this. Now, there's not a lot of information about Radharani's childhood, like there is about Krishna's childhood. She's Veda Gupya. Veda Gupya means Radharani is such a mysterious, such a deep personality. Again, we must approach with caution. We're allowed to chant her name, but Veda Gupya means she's hidden in the Vedas. There's not a lot of information about her until the appearance of Madhavinda Puri, and then the transcendental treasure chest of Krishna consciousness. The glories of Radha and Krishna were given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He introduced Braj Bhakti to the Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prem Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaur. This is Rupa Goswami's impression upon first seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Ramkeli. He was living there with Sanatan and they were engaged in the Hussain Shah. It's all pastime, government ministers. And Mahaprabhu knew they were there because they'd exchanged some letters when he was in Puri. He was on his way to Vrindavan. He took a detour to go north in Ramkeli. See how merciful he is? And when Mahaprabhu came into the village, 7 feet tall, his arms extended down to his knees. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari. In the mood of Radha. He came. So he's golden like Radha. When he turned the corner to come into the village, Rupa Goswami went, whoa! Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prem Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Go. You're the most merciful incarnation because you've come into this dark iron age of Kali. Generally, you're Tri Yuga avatar. You only come in the Satya Chaitantapuri, you don't come in Kali. Nobody will listen to you. Everyone goes to hell. Kali comes in, chop, 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 Kalki. But you've come. And you've come with the highest message of love of God. Vrindavan, you're giving it to the most fallen people. What could be more amazing than this? What could be more amazing than this? So we're blessed. We're blessed to be part of that tradition of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, giving this Braj Bhakti to the world. But we have to do it in a conscientious way. So there's not a lot of information about Radharani's childhood because she's Vedagupya. She's hidden in the Vedas. Before the time of Madhavendra Puri, before Mahaprabhu, no one knew Radharani. Even Shukadev Goswami, he's speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, he's speaking 10th canto. He didn't mention her. He mentioned her indirectly, Aradhana, that Gopi who gives the most pleasure to Krishna. Why? Well, there's one reason he didn't mention Radharani, because that's his Ishtadev. Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami. His Ishtadev is Srimati Radharani. And it said that if he started revealing her glories then, he would just go into ecstasy and start crying and shaking and trembling. He couldn't finish his dissertation. The Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam, 10 cantos. All very mysterious. So they don't know so much about it until the time of Mahaprabhu. So we don't know so much even about her childhood. Most of Radharani's pastimes are actually oral tradition. If you walk around Vrindavan, my grandpa told me this, my great-grandpa said that. But generally, oral is accepted if it's not contrary to tattva. You know, some people may speculate, but if we hear from people like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Binjabhushana, their knowledge is more relevant than the Vedas because they're pure devotees. And Brajbasi, some of these oral traditions have been passed down. It's also referred to as traditional wisdom. And traditional wisdom is taken as a type of evidence. Really? Yep. Shruti pratyaksham aitritam anu manam chatushtayan praman es vana vashtanad vikalpatsa virajate. From the four types of evidence, Vedic knowledge, direct experience, traditional wisdom, and logical induction, one can understand the temporary, insubstantial situation of the material world and thus become detached from the duality of this world. Chaitanya Charitamrita. So if it comes from authority, like Prabhupada, he sometimes quoted oral tradition. You know, the touchstone, the boy goes and that whole touchstone pastime that takes place in the forest. The boy goes there and he asks the sadhu, "You have the most wonderful thing. Can I have it?" And the sadhu thinks it's a materialistic guy. So, yeah, there's a touchstone in the garbage there. Finally, he realizes that greater than that is Krishna consciousness. So he asks for the mantra, Hare Krishna mantra. And the lady who takes the liquid beauty, that's oral tradition. Sometimes I still use that story of liquid beauty. You know, do you even remember that story? Liquid beauty, Prabhupada would quote. That's oral tradition. It's there, but best to hear it from Srila Prabhupada. So there's oral tradition about some of the earlier pastimes of Radha. It falls under the category of traditional wisdom. Now, anyway, there's a beautiful Leela in Garga Samhita, again, as to how Radha and Krishna first met. Well, she's appeared now. We've discussed her appearance. Like, what does she do? We know what Krishna did as a baby. He's very naughty. He'd steal butter. Bakanchor. He's a thief. Everyone loved it because by hearing about his stealing pastimes, they remembered Krishna. And remembering Krishna can only be auspicious because he's the supreme, auspicious, supreme personality of Godhead. So if he's a thief, okay, I'm remembering him. Cheto Darpana Marja. More than that, I'm coming to love him. He's the cutest thief of all. Like that. So Radharani, we know about her appearance. So what did she do? We don't hear of her Makanchor and so forth, and killing demons like Akasura. Let's discuss then how Radha and Krishna first met. Would you like to hear that? It's not getting too late? Okay, so how Radha and Krishna first met. Again, Garga Samhita. It begins with Narad Muni, all glories to Narada Muni, who not long after Krishna appeared, came to Gokul to have darshan of baby Krishna. He heard Krishna appeared. Actually, many demigods came, not visible, but they were there to see their Lord when his interesting pastimes in the material world. So Narada Muni, he came to see Krishna. While he was there gazing at baby Krishna, in his heart, it's described in Garga Samhita, he felt some type of message that the Lord's Ladini Shakti, again, the Lord's pleasure potency, manifested as the personality of Radharani, because the Lord wants to enjoy, and enjoyment means 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. You try to enjoy alone, it's really boring. I want to go see my friends. I want to call up go see my dad. Enjoyment means many. So Krishna was originally one. He expanded as Radha for his pleasure potency. She's the pleasure potency of the Lord. So while Narada is very mystical, but this is a day we can go a little deeper. See Radhe. So he's there in front of Krishna, and he gets this message in his heart that the Lord's Ladini Shakti, Sri Radha, has taken birth as well. So he starts going village to village around Brajmandal. Brajmandal is, we talk about Vrindavan, but Vrindavan extends many koshas, many miles. It's very big. There's 60 billion holy places in Braj. We have a lot of research to do, a lot of Friday lectures to give. But he was going around inquiring about the appearance of Radha. Finally, he came to what? Brabal, all arranged by Purnamasi. And he met King Vrishabhanu. He said, "Hey, King, how are you doing today?" So the king said, "Narada, it's wonderful you've come to my home. Is there any particular reason you've come?" Narada said, "Yes, I have a question. Has a beautiful, effulgent little girl taken birth within your home?" And a big smile came on Maharaj Vrishabhanu's face. And he replied, "Yes, by the grace of the Lord, I have been blessed with a daughter who is divinely effulgent." But then King Vrishabhanu became a little despondent. He looked down and he said, "But unfortunately, my daughter has not opened her eyes." You know, babies, they're born not blind. Their eyes are open. My baby daughter's blind. So Narada Muni said, "Oh, she hasn't opened her eyes?" So King Vrishabhanu said, "Yes, therefore, we do not know whether she is blind or if she a celestial being who is unwilling to look at the imperfections of this world." Wow. The answers of these liberated souls, actually Nitya Siddha, they're eternally liberated. They're just, sometimes they just capture your heart. That's a wow experience. Like they try for wow experiences in the world, they drink this. Here's a wow experience. Yes, therefore we do not know whether she is blind or if she is a celestial being who is unwilling to look at the imperfections of this world. Even in Shvargalok, they're much more Krishna conscious. They don't want to go on the internet and search the internet and watch the movies. And, they don't want to see the imperfections of the. When the demigods come, they don't even touch this nasty earth. The demigods are all walking. They're floating. Their feet are 3 feet above the earth. If you ever, that person wasn't. Is it demigod? They don't want to get contaminated by coming in touch with this earth planet and all that it is. Neither should we. Like Jesus said, we should be in this world, but not of this world. How do you do that? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama. Why? Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in one of his writings, I was reading recently, that all of Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes are present in the Mahamantra. Not only the pastimes, but the moods, the rasas. They're all present and the sound of the Maha Mantra. That made me want to chant more. That was a wow moment for me. So we want to be aloof. Jesus said, in this world, like a lotus flower, the stem of the lotus flower goes in the muck, the silt, the mud at the bottom of the lake, and the stem comes up, and then there's the leaves. But above it all is the flower. You look at a lotus flower. It's in the lake, but not in the lake. In this world, but not of this world. How do we do it? Even as neophyte devotees, we can be aloof by being detached from sense gratification in its most strongest forms, meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, and intoxication, but more so by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Yes, therefore, we do not know whether she is blind or she's a celestial being who doesn't want to look at the imperfection. Well, I don't want to look either. But I have to look. I'll look through the eyes of Guru and Shastra. So Narada said, well, can I see her? Because he knew. So King Vrishabhanu sent for his servants, and they brought little baby Radha before Narada Muni. And because of his deep spiritual insight, he was able to perceive this is not an ordinary baby. This is Krishna's eternal consort, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radhika. And only out of great difficulty, upon seeing her, was he able to restrain his ecstatic emotions. So Narada said to King Vrishabhanu, my dear king, Providence has surely blessed you. Quickly bring me the items that we can perform a purificatory ceremony. I will perform such a ceremony to ensure that in time, this child blesses the world with the glance of her dove-like eyes. Heart-melting. Her dove-like eyes. Even the birds are confirming. So King Vrishabhanu was in ecstasy. So while Vrishabhanu was getting the puja paraphernalia ready, Narada Muni knelt down and revealed his heart to Sri Radha with a beautiful prayer. It's one of my all-time favorites. I'm not a shlokawala like Vaisheshika Prabhu. Have you heard Vaisheshika Prabhu? You just ask for any verse from Bhagavad Gita, Shrimad Bhagavatam, blah. Fantastic preacher. I take the dust of his feet on my head. But I have a few favorites. And this verse is Garga Samhita 1:8-12. This is the prayer that he said to Radha. And we're not capable at our stage of composing, we can compose our heartfelt feelings, but to become really poetic and something that Krishna really likes, we can quote other devotees, advanced devotees, and pray in the same way that they pray before the deities. This is more sophisticated way. We can call out, my friend. Prabhupada said, what's the meaning of this Maha Mantra? One time he said, it means my friend, my friend, my friend. But sometimes the prayers encapsulate what's really deep within our hearts. So here's the heart of Narada Muni. I wander over this earth, meditating on her, who is a moon shining in the rasa dance arena, who is a host of bright lamps in Vrishabhanu's palace, and who is the central jewel in the necklace of Goloka. Some of you are fainting. I wander over this earth, because this is traveling sannyasi, so I want to be like Narada Muni, hope against hope. I wander over this earth meditating on her, who is a moon shining in the rasa dance arena, and who is a host of bright lamps in Vrishabhanu's palace, and who is the central jewel in the necklace of Goloka. Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani Ki. And as he said this prayer, this little baby girl started wiggling her hands, like kids do. But knowing that her devotee Narada was actually eager to behold her original form, Radharani then appeared before him as a fresh youth, a girl around 7 or 8 years old. And on either side of Radharani was Lalita and Vishaka. So at this point, you can just imagine Narada Muni becoming speechless and gazing upon this divine form of Radharani. Then suddenly, from round the corner came King Vrishabhanu with all the puja paraphernalia. So immediately Radharani became a baby again, and hiding his ecstasies, Narada Muni, with great difficulty, did the ritual so that she would gain her sight back again. Now, because of that special darshan with Radharani, Narada Muni was left with a very deep and intense desire for her association, or more so, you could say her seva. This is why we meditate her and pray to her. We want to serve her. We are servants. So he went to a place in Vrindavan, Govardhan Hill. We go there on our Govardhan Parikrama. And he did austerities, Narada Muni, for a very long time. And he was eventually able to enter into Krishna's pastimes in the form of a gopi. It's a whole class, but you have to come on Kartik Parikrama with us. He became known as Naradi Gopi. I was shocked when I first read that. It's everywhere in Goswami literature. Naradi Gopi. Some say he simultaneously continues his travels throughout the universe. Others say that he left that service as Naradi Gopi just to continue preaching Krishna consciousness throughout the 14 worlds. He goes back and gives reports. Yes, this ISKCON movement's doing great. This is Bhadra Purnima. This is that month in the Bhadra when the moon is shining, that the ISKCON devotees are going all over the world doing how many sets, Rasika? 68,000 sets. Huh? Yes, there's a Sankirtan devotee. He knows, servant of Narada Muni. So that he goes and gives reports. So Lord knows what you're doing. Now Radharani didn't open her eyes immediately after the purificatory ceremony. But King Vrishabhanu had great faith that whatever that sage would say would come to be true. Just like we have that faith in Prabhupada. One time I asked Tamal Krishna Goswami, what is the ideal qualification of a disciple? What should we look for when someone approaches us for initiation? What is there a distinguishing quality we should look? And he immediately replied, he said, Guru Nishta. Yasha Devi Para Bhaktir Yatta Devi Tata Guru. One who has full faith in the spiritual master and the Vedas. The full purport of Vedic knowledge is revealed. So this Guru Nishta is it's essential for advancing in Krishna consciousness. So King Vrishabhanu, he had that faith that whatever the sage, because he's taken the sage as like Shiksha Guru, it would come true. Prabhupada has made some amazing statements, as we said the other day. This Krishna conscious movement will save the world in its darkest hour. Wow. I'd like to take birth again to be part of that part of the movement. I don't know, what's going to be really exciting. Charge! Hare Krishna! Take this book. Give up your nonsense, dear Prime Minister. Yes, I will do so now. Who knows? There's many wonderful chapters in our journey back home, back to God. That Krishna consciousness only gets better. So we're preachers, so maybe we'll have that grace, Prabhupada's grace, to see what happens in the future. Let's see. Janme Prabhu Shai. So the next day, Purnamasi, who's Purnamasi? She's the person who arranges all of Radha and Krishna's pastimes in the early morning at Gupta Kund. She comes with Vrinda Devi, who is her assistant, and they decide, how they're going to get Radha and Krishna to meet, because it's not easy. They have their families, families have their spies, and how they're going to meet, where they're going to meet, what the weather will be like, what the birds will be chirping, how many bumblebees, how many flowers, what the scent in the air will be, who will come at what time to accent it, like that. Purnamasi, she's a wonderful person. Sometimes she's referred to as Yoga Maya. So the next day, Purnamasi arrived to have darshan of Radharani. Wow, she came to have darshan. And when Purnamasi first saw Radharani, very beautiful words came from Purnamasi's mouth. Now we can continue this class next year, or I could share with you what Garga Samhita says, what the words were from the mouth of Purnamasi, Yogamaya, when she first saw Sri Radha. Who'd like to hear? Raise your hand. Okay. This girl is not ordinary. Great personalities like Brahma, Shiva, and Narada worship her knowing that she can fulfill all their desires, material and spiritual. So please take good care of her. So the king and queen, they were overjoyed hearing this blessing from Purnamasi, but at the same time they were concerned. They expressed their concern to Purnamasi. Look, her eyes are closed. We don't know what's going on. Why are her eyes closed? Why doesn't she open her eyes? Purnamasi, is she blind? Of course, we know that Purnamasi, she's arranged this whole thing. But she just smiled and said, don't worry, it's Sri Radha's pastime. Don't worry. So the next day, the pastime unfolded even more when Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, with baby Krishna, came to visit their close friends, King Vrishabhanu and Queen Kirtidusundari. They're two couples. Nanda and Yashoda are the parents of Krishna, and Vrishabhanu and Kirtida are the parents of. So, parents, like when I was a kid, the neighbors would come over, or something, parents. So they came together to show their babies. And when they arrived, Radharani was sleeping in her crib in her bedroom. So Nanda and Yashoda, they were met at the door by Vrishabhanu and Kirtida, and they were invited into a reception room, and they started talking, two couples. I can imagine how deep it was. Their katha, their Krishna katha, Nanda and Yashoda, and King Vrishabhanu and Kirtida. One day I'd like to hear that. It's all possible by Prabhupada's grace. So they're talking. So while they're doing that, Krishna was lying quietly in Mother Yashoda's lap. But the conversation got quite intense, so Krishna slowly climbed off and he crawled towards the bedroom of Radharani. They're little children here. These are the childhood pastimes. And when he came into her room, he crawled over to her crib and recognizing her as his eternal divine consort, he reached out and very gently touched Radha's eyes. And Garga Samhita describes that moment very nicely. That as soon as Radharani felt the touch of Krishna's hands on her eyes, she became aware that the person for whom her eyes were created was sitting beside her. Our hearts are melting, right? Get it off the ground. As soon as Radharani felt the touch of Krishna's hands on her eyes, she became aware that the person for whom her eyes were created was sitting beside her. We should try to think like that as well. These eyes, what are the use of these eyes, these ears, these tongues, these senses, unless we utilize them in the service of the Lord? There's so many ways you can engage your senses. And if your senses are fully engaged in the service of life, your mind will follow suit and you'll think of Krishna. This is the practical application of Krishna consciousness. She opened her cloud blue eyes. Now we know. She opened her cloud blue eyes and smiled. Meanwhile, all the parents, seeing that Krishna wasn't present, began looking for him. And when they came in the room where Radha and Krishna were playing together like little children, they saw Radharani's eyes wide open, and they said, Jai Sri Radhe! Hare Krishna. So when Radharani turned, I can't go on too much longer, but when Radharani turned 7 months old, Kirtidusundari decided it was time to celebrate her daughter's grain ceremony. 6 or 7 months. Those of you who are mothers, right, you have the grain ceremony. That's called Annaprashna. So King Vrishabhanu and Kirtidusundari, because the Brajbasi, they follow all the Vedic culture, but it's just kind of the atmosphere, but really it's just pure devotion to Krishna. They don't have to do it, but they have temples, they worship Nrsimhadev, they talk about Vishnu, but really they're just mad after Krishna. So the grain ceremony came, and announcements were made, and that their daughter was going to take her first grains, Radharani. So news spread, and soon thousands of Brajabasis came to the ceremony, and amongst the respected guests were Nanda Baba, Mother Yashoda, and what would it be without baby Krishna? What would life be without Krishna? So the Brahmins had made this big yajna, and they were chanting Vedic mantras. And while Kirtida Sundari was sitting near the sacred fire with Radharani in her lap, at that moment, Mother Yasoda came and sat next to her, because they're friends. Now, Mother Yasoda, because Krishna's child, he'd already had his grain ceremony, she brought a little bowl of sweet rice to keep Krishna occupied. Isn't it, mothers? You go someplace, you have some sweets. So, because Krishna's naughty and always moving, she brought a little pot of sweet rice. So, suddenly, they're sitting, there's Kirtida with Radha, 6 or 7 months old, ready to take the grains given by the Brahmins. And there's Mother Yasoda with a bowl of sweet rice. Guess what happened? Radharani reached over and took from the sweet rice of Krishna's pot and ate it. In this way, her first grains were Krishna Prashadam. Haribol! So there's a note here, Garga Samhita says, that when the Brahmins saw that, they canceled the ceremony. No, this is not right. It's all polluted now, and they all left. Poor Brahmins. And because Radharani's first grains were Krishna's remnants, the acharyas comment that this spontaneous event strengthened the two mothers, Yasoda and Kirtida Sundari's conviction that divine providence has chosen their children for each other. True, but not as married as Parakya Bhav, unwedded. That's deeper, but that's another lecture. I'm not so qualified. So these are some of the sweet pastimes of Radharani's babyhood, but I pray that these Leelas will inspire you. We could go on for hours and hours, and we should actually, but Radharani has her darshan for us, and she's going to look into your hearts. So open your hearts. So, 9:30, okay. So by regularly hearing Krishna Katha, Shravanam, Kirtanam, it says Vishnu Smaranam, we say Krishna Smaranam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, it all starts from hearing. That's why it's very rich culture, very deep philosophy, but simple process in many ways. That's why when Prabhupada came to the West, he was purifying our hearts by giving his lectures. He was lecturing on Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, very deep. That was the favorite book of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in 26th Avenue. He was giving these type of lectures, usually more simple, but if you hear those early lectures, there's some nectarine parts there. How much did we understand? Even Prabhupada's accent it took time for Prabhupada, his English became better, but everyone was transfixed by that transcendental sound vibration. One time we were sitting with Prabhupada in Hyderabad. We'd taken the train from Calcutta to Hyderabad to, actually Prabhupada was going to install Radha Krishna deities in the Hyderabad temple. They're the biggest Radha Krishna deities in the movement. They're just really tall. I had to look up myself. It was a wonderful ceremony. But before that, he went out to the Hyderabad farm, actually the day we arrived, and there were some villagers there. Prabhupada wanted to see our land and preach to the villagers. So there was a big banyan tree, and he sat under there, and I was so tired. We traveled all the way from Kolkata, 3rd class. Prabhupada, of course, went 1st class, and we didn't have anything to eat, and it was so hot, and But I came along, and I was sitting right in front of Srila Prabhupada, and he started preaching to the villagers in Hindi. So I went, And then suddenly I heard this voice, Indradyumna, why are you sleeping when I am speaking of Krishna? Srila Prabhupada, I don't speak Hindi. And he said, that does not matter. This is Shabda Brahma. It will purify your heart. Stay awake. I never slept in a class ever again. Even during my job, I Oh, those instructions go straight. They become etched in stone. There's certain things that Prabhupada said in my heart that they're etched in stone, like that. So this is Shabda Brahma. This is transcendental sound vibration. Even though the subject matter may be very deep, it's purifying the heart. And when the heart is purified of all these obstacles, then that seed of bhakti will grow. Even as even as we're getting purified of the obstacles, the seed's also growing. It may have been there for millions and billions and billions and billions of lifetimes, but it's like a pilot light in your house, another analogy. Even you go away from your house, pilot light's still burning, isn't it? In the furnace, you come back and turn it on. But you have to come in contact with Krishna consciousness, with Srila Prabhupada's movement, that seed to grow. Just like in the market, the seeds may be in packages for years. They don't germinate. You have to take the seed and put it in the fertile ground and then water it. Then it's mysterious. Actually, I heard Prabhupada say in Geneva, this whole material creation is mystical. So how's it mystical? Well, he went on to explain, giving so many examples, like the atom and the universe are very similar, perfectly symmetrical, no conflict going on. And he went on to explain. So the great mysteries of Krishna consciousness. So if we just hear, that is watering that seed of bhakti. So even when we're not so inclined, we still chant our rounds. Even when we're not inclined, we hear the Bhagavatam. And that seed. But if you're really open to hearing and then chanting, then the Krishna Shmaranam, it comes very quickly. To always remember Krishna and never forget him. So this is a very potent day, as we said in the beginning, quoting our beloved Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the pioneer of this Krishna, who went to so much trouble to revigorate, reestablish Krishna consciousness, with the vision of spreading it all over the world. He told us, he's speaking to us, holy days like Ekadasi and Janmashtami are the mothers of devotion for devotees who properly respect. So I hope that this lecture from an aspiring devotee, trying to present with humility, I hope this has purified all our hearts, because speaker and listeners, they all become purified, and given us a little taste of what Braj Bhakti is, what is service to Radharani. Who will recommend us to Krishna? One time Prabhupada said, Radharani is the compassionate feature of Krishna. Krishna is hard like a thunderbolt and soft like a rose. So Radharani is like the rose. That when she sees a girl come to the LA temple, he was saying, on Watsika Avenue, just steps in the door and starts thinking, this Hare Krishna, I like this food, I like this thing. Then Prabhupada said, Radharani says to Krishna, there's a young girl there, you please accept her as your servant. So as Krishna Bhaktas, we want to take her shelter today, so that one day she'll introduce us to Krishna. Actually, the philosophy becomes even deeper, because many devotees, they want to be her servants. It's this competition in the spiritual, I won't go into it, but we can finish a little bit in that light by hearing from Srila Bhavana Saraswati. He talks about Radhastami. Some headed by Uddhava attain the mood of service. Others achieve the praiseworthy position like that of Sridham. Others attain the mood of the lotus-eyed damsels of Braj. While others, most fortunate of all, came to drink the sweet lotus of Radha Das. What wealth did the world not attain through Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy? This is quite deep, but just one comment. Actually, the followers of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's generally understood, they want to be in the mood of manjari buffs, humble servants of the ladies serving milkmaids in Vrindavan. Of course, any rasa is nice. Madhavinda Puri, who originally introduced the idea of Vrindavan and Radha and Krishna, he's a tree in Vrindavan. Radha Krishna Gunadisha Dipika lists who's who in Chaitanya Lila, who they are in the spiritual world. Madhavinda Puri. O my Lord, O gracious to the lowly, thou art now living in Mathura. When wilt thou come to me? O darling mine, my heart is burning in pains of separation. Oh, what shall I do? Oh, what shall I do? This is on his deathbed. And there were two servants there. One said, why are you lamenting, Guru Maharaj? And that disciple got rejected. But Ishwara Puri, the other disciple, he was helping his spiritual master leave his understanding that deep mood of Madhavinda Puri, feeling separation from Krishna. He's a tree in Vrindavan at Nidhivan, and he knows about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna because he stands there and watches those deep pastimes in Nidhivan, in Sevakunj. That's how he knows. That's how he knows. So every rasa is wonderful, but actually it's said that the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like all of our Goswamis, all of our Goswamis, they were in that mood. So we'll finish with Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur encouraging us in the same way, if it so be, in the Sri Nikunja Keli Viru Dhavali. It's verse 67. It's another one. If I got a tattoo, I'd have one here and one here, but I'm not into tattoos. O all auspicious Krishna, may you be victorious. You perform all kinds of sweet pastimes. Let my name also be there when you count Shri Radha's associates. This is my prayer. Although I am covered by material consciousness, I can still aspire for this. O Lord, let my prayer be fulfilled. Shri Radhastami Maha Mahotsava ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Go Premanande. Thank you. Hare Krishna.